The words hit me like a sledgehammer while I was under the hood of my ancient Chevy in the garage. Through the thin wall separating me from the kitchen, I heard my wife Nessa's voice, calm and matter-of-fact, after 31 years of marriage. I deserve to be happy, even if it hurts him. I froze, wrench in hand, motor oil dripping onto the concrete floor. The fluorescent light above flickered, casting dancing shadows across the cluttered workbench where I'd spent countless evenings avoiding the growing silence in our house. "Mom, are you sure about this?" That was our daughter Cassie, 28 years old, and apparently my wife's confidant in whatever scheme they were cooking up. "Absolutely," Nessa replied without hesitation. "Your father hasn't been the same man I married. He's become boring, predictable. Gil makes me feel alive again." Gil Rowan, I knew that name. Worked at the insurance office downtown, divorced last year, drives a silver BMW that's too expensive for his salary. The pieces clicked together like tumblers in a lock I didn't want to open. "But Dad will be devastated," Cassie said, though her tone suggested she was more concerned about logistics than my feelings. "He'll get over it. Besides, it's just a harmless mistake. People drift apart. That's life." A harmless mistake. 31 years reduced to a harmless mistake. I set the wrench down carefully, wiped my hands on the shop rag, and listened to my own daughter help my wife justify destroying our marriage. The garage suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Every tool hanging on the pegboard, every project I'd started and finished in this space, seemed to mock me. "How long has this been going on?" Cassie asked. 6 months. Your house has been perfect. Gil and I meet there Tuesday and Thursday afternoons while you're at work and Jake's at daycare. My daughter's house. The modest 3-bedroom ranch I'd co-signed for because her credit wasn't good enough. The house where I'd helped install new flooring, painted the nursery, fixed the leaky faucet just last month. They'd been using it as their personal motel. "Jake loves Uncle Gil," Cassie said, with a laugh that made my stomach turn. "He thinks Gil is just Mommy's friend who brings cookies." They'd involved my grandson. My 4-year-old grandson had been watching his grandmother cheat on his grandfather, and they'd coached him to think it was normal. I backed away from the wall, my work boots silent on the concrete. The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. More than enough. I walked to my workbench and stared at the calendar hanging above it. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Today was Wednesday. The smart thing would have been to storm into the kitchen, demand explanations, fight for my marriage like some romantic comedy hero. But I'm not a hero. I'm Drake Torin, 53 years old, owner of Torin Heating and Air Conditioning, a man who's spent 3 decades fixing other people's problems while my own life fell apart 1 degree at a time. Instead, I grabbed my keys and walked out the side door of the garage. The November air bit through my flannel shirt as I climbed into my pickup truck, a 15-year-old Ford that had more miles on it than most people's houses had square feet. I sat there in the driveway, engine running, looking at the house I'd been paying for since before Cassie was born. The yellow light in the kitchen window showed 2 silhouettes still talking, still planning, still treating my marriage like a minor inconvenience to work around. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. Margaret Chen, at First National Bank. We'd done business for years. She'd handled the paperwork when I co-signed Cassie's mortgage. "Margaret, it's Drake Torin. I need to discuss the mortgage on 47 Pine Street. Yes, my daughter's house. I want to invoke the occupancy clause." The occupancy clause. A little-known provision in most mortgages that allows the primary signatory to flag unauthorized use of the property. When I co-signed for Cassie, I'd insisted on it. Call it paranoia or call it experience, but I'd learned that family money always gets complicated. "Are you sure about this, Drake?" Margaret's voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen too many families implode over money. "This will freeze all activity on the account. No refinancing, no equity access, and the bank will require documentation of all occupants." "I'm sure." I'll email you the details within the hour. I hung up and drove home, my mind working through the implications like I was diagnosing a broken furnace. Find the problem, trace the connections, fix what's broken. Sometimes that means replacing parts. Sometimes it means scrapping the whole system. Back in my garage, I fired up the old desktop computer I used for invoicing. The keyboard clicked as I typed up a detailed statement about unauthorized occupants at 47 Pine Street, including dates, times, and the nature of the activities. I attached photos I'd taken of Gil's BMW parked in Cassie's driveway on previous Tuesday afternoons when I'd driven by to check on them. I'd thought I was being a caring father and grandfather. Turns out I was gathering evidence. The email went to Margaret at the bank, copied to my lawyer, Tom Brennan, with a note about filing for divorce. No dramatic confrontations, no shouting matches, just documentation and legal procedures. By the time I finished, the house had gone quiet. Nessa had probably gone to bed, dreaming about her Tuesday afternoon adventures. I sat in the garage until midnight, organizing my tools and thinking about the conversation I'd overheard. She deserved to be happy, even if it hurt me. After 31 years of marriage, 2 miscarriages, Cassie's teenage rebellion, my mother's long battle with cancer, building a business from nothing, and all the small compromises that make a life together, she deserved happiness more than I deserved respect. The next morning, Nessa left early for her job at the county clerk's office. She'd been working there for 15 years, processing other people's divorces and property transfers. The irony wasn't lost on me. I called Tom Brennan at 9 sharp. Drake, I got your email. Are you absolutely certain about this path? Divorce is expensive and messy. Tom, I've been married for 31 years. I know what expensive and messy looks like. This is about self-respect. The evidence you've provided is solid. The mortgage situation gives us significant leverage. Your wife and daughter have essentially committed mortgage fraud by misrepresenting the use of the property. Mortgage fraud. I'd been thinking of it as betrayal, but the law had more specific terms. Tom filed the divorce papers that afternoon. I requested copies be sent to Nessa's parents, Harold and Ruth Kellerman, who'd never thought I was good enough for their daughter. After 31 years, it seemed they were right. The first call came at 3:30. Cassie, sobbing into the phone like she was 16 again and had wrecked the car. Dad, what did you do? The bank called Jake's daycare asking about unauthorized adults in the house. They want to inspect the property tomorrow. I exercised my rights as co-signer, nothing more, nothing less. But this will ruin everything. Jake and I might lose the house. You should have thought about that before you turned it into a motel. She hung up. The second call came 20 minutes later. Nessa, her voice tight with panic. Drake, we need to talk. Now. We needed to talk 6 months ago. Now we need lawyers. I hung up and went back to work. Mrs. Patterson's furnace needed a new heat exchanger, and honest work has always been my best therapy. The confrontation came that evening. Nessa stormed into the garage where I was rebuilding a blower motor, her face flushed with anger and something that might have been fear. You can't do this to Cassie. She's innocent. I looked up from the motor housing, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. Innocent? She's been covering for you for 6 months. She's been lying to her husband, coaching my grandson to accept your boyfriend as normal, and using the house I co-signed as your personal affair headquarters. What part of that sounds innocent? It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone, but it was supposed to hurt me. You said so yourself. You deserve happiness even if it hurts me. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. Nessa's composure cracked. I never meant for you to find out this way. How did you mean for me to find out? Christmas morning? Our anniversary? Maybe you planned to introduce Gil at Cassie's next birthday party? She had no answer for that. People never plan the discovery phase of their affairs. They live in a bubble where consequences don't exist and other people's feelings don't matter. Gil and I love each other, she said finally. Good for you. Love him somewhere else. Don't be cruel, Drake. This isn't like you. That stopped me. I set down my tools and really looked at my wife for the first time in months. 50 years old, still attractive, wearing the pearl earrings I'd given her for our 20th anniversary. She was right. This wasn't like me. The old Drake would have tried to fix things, would have asked what he'd done wrong, would have begged for another chance. But the old Drake hadn't heard his wife and daughter planning his humiliation in his own kitchen. You're right. The old me would have pretended not to know, would have let you have your fun while I paid the bills and maintained the house and played the fool. But that Drake died yesterday afternoon. This Drake doesn't negotiate with people who think his feelings don't matter. I want to try counseling. We can work through this. You can work through it with Gil. I hear he's available Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. She left without another word. I finished rebuilding the motor and went to bed in the guest room. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. The bank inspection happened at 10 a.m. Margaret Chen called me afterward. Drake, this is worse than we thought. Your daughter's been claiming the house as a primary residence for tax purposes while essentially running an unlicensed boarding situation. The unauthorized occupant issue is just the beginning. What are my options? As co-signer, you can demand immediate occupancy verification or call the loan. Given the misrepresentation of use, the bank would support either action. I chose verification. Let them scramble to explain 6 months of Tuesday and Thursday visitors to a federal inspector. Cassie called that afternoon, her voice smaller than I'd heard since she was a child. Dad, Jake's asking why strangers are taking pictures of his house. How do I explain this? Tell him the truth. Tell him Grandma made some bad choices and now everyone has to deal with the consequences. He's 4 years old. Then tell him whatever you want. You've been lying to him for 6 months. What's one more story? The silence stretched between us. Finally, she whispered, I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. You looked me in the eye every Sunday dinner, every birthday party, every family gathering, knowing what you were helping her do. You called it a harmless mistake, so live with your harmless mistake. I hung up and poured myself a beer. The house felt different without Nessa's constant presence. Quieter, but not peaceful. More like the silence after a storm when you're waiting to see what's been destroyed. Tom Brennan called that evening with an update on the divorce proceedings. Nessa's hired Patricia Vance. Good lawyer, expensive. They're going to fight the adultery claims and try to paint you as vindictive and controlling. Let them try. I have recordings. Recordings? I'd forgotten to mention that detail. Baby monitor in Cassie's living room. Jake likes to listen to stories when he naps on the couch. It streams to an app on Cassie's phone, but she gave me the password months ago in case of emergencies. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Drake, please tell me you didn't record your wife and her lover. I didn't record anything. Jake's baby monitor recorded everything. I just happened to check the app last Tuesday when I was worried about him having a fever. That's actually legally admissible. The monitor is there for child safety, you had authorized access, and you discovered the recordings accidentally during legitimate use. Sometimes being a paranoid grandfather pays off. How much material do we have? 6 weeks of Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, enough to establish a pattern. I could hear Tom's keyboard clicking as he took notes. This changes everything. They can't claim it was a one-time mistake or deny the affair. We have evidence of premeditation, extended deception, and misuse of property. What's the timeline? With this evidence, we can probably wrap this up in 60 days. New York's no-fault divorce laws work in our favor, and the adultery evidence supports your position on asset division. After Tom hung up, I sat in my garage and thought about patterns. 31 years of marriage, and I'd never noticed when the pattern changed. Nessa's late nights had become routine. Her new clothes and perfume had seemed like midlife confidence. Her distance had felt like the natural evolution of a long marriage. I'd been fixing everyone else's heating and cooling systems, while my own house fell apart 1 degree at a time. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Gil. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. "No, we don't. I think there's been a misunderstanding." The only misunderstanding was thinking you could use my property for your affair without consequences. Nessa loves you. She's confused right now, but she loves you. I turned off my phone. Gil Rowan could talk to my lawyer. The next few days brought a parade of uncomfortable conversations. Harold Kellerman, Nessa's father, called to lecture me about forgiveness and the sanctity of marriage. Ruth Kellerman left voicemails about how disappointed she was in my vindictive behavior. Cassie's husband, Jake Sr., called to ask if there was anything he could do to help resolve the situation. "Your wife has been lying to you for 6 months, I told him. Maybe start there. Cassie says it wasn't her idea. Cassie says a lot of things. The bank inspector found evidence of regular unauthorized occupancy. That's mortgage fraud, Jake. Your wife committed a federal crime to help my wife cheat." The line went quiet. Jake Sr. was a good man, an electrician who worked hard and loved his family. He deserved better than being caught in the middle of this mess. "What do you want me to do?" he asked finally. "Protect your son. This is going to get worse before it gets better." I was right. The next Tuesday, Gil Rowan showed up at my shop. Torin Heating and Air Conditioning operates out of a converted garage behind my house. It's not much to look at, but I've built a solid reputation over 25 years. My customers trust me because I don't oversell, I show up when I say I will, and I fix things right the first time. Gil walked in while I was pricing a job for the Methodist Church. He looked exactly like I'd expected. Soft around the middle, expensive haircut, manicured nails. The kind of man who'd never changed his own oil or fixed a leaky faucet. "Mr. Torin, I'm Gil Rowan. I think we should discuss this situation like civilized adults." I looked up from my calculator. "This situation?" "The misunderstanding with Nessa. She's told me a lot about you. I respect what you've built here, and I don't want to be the cause of unnecessary conflict." Unnecessary conflict. I set down my pen and really looked at him. "You've been sleeping with my wife in my daughter's house for 6 months, but you're worried about unnecessary conflict?" Nessa and I didn't plan for this to happen. Sometimes people connect in unexpected ways. "You connected in my daughter's bedroom while my grandson was downstairs watching cartoons. That's not a connection, Gil. That's a choice. A series of choices, actually, all of them bad." His composure slipped slightly. "Look, I know you're angry, but destroying Cassie's mortgage situation isn't going to fix your marriage." "My marriage is over. Cassie's mortgage situation is a separate issue involving fraud and misrepresentation. If you're worried about her, maybe you should have thought about consequences before you decided to use her house as your personal hotel." "I'm trying to be reasonable here." "No, you're trying to manipulate me into backing down so you can keep playing house with my wife. But here's the thing, Gil. I'm not reasonable anymore. I'm done being the understanding husband who pretends not to notice when his wife comes home smelling like another man's cologne." Gil's face flushed red. "Nessa deserves better than this. Nessa deserves exactly what she's getting. Actions have consequences, even for insurance salesmen who think other people's marriages are their personal playground." He left without another word. I went back to pricing the church job, but my hands were shaking slightly. Confrontation had never been my strong suit. I was more of a fix-it-quietly and move-on type of person. But something had changed when I heard that conversation in my kitchen. The old Drake had died, and this new version didn't care about being polite to people who'd treated him like garbage. That evening, Nessa came by to collect more of her clothes. She'd been staying with her sister Linda since the bank inspection, claiming she needed space to think. I was in the garage when she arrived, but I could hear her moving around upstairs. When she came down 20 minutes later, she paused in the doorway between the house and garage. "Gil told me you two talked." "Gil told you wrong. He talked." I listened. Then I told him to leave. "He's trying to help. He's trying to save himself. There's a difference." Nessa stepped into the garage, looking around at the organized chaos of my workspace. "I remember when you first set this up. You were so excited about being your own boss. I still am my own boss. That's why I can make decisions without consulting people who don't have my best interests at heart. I did have your best interests at heart. For 31 years. Until you decided you deserved happiness even if it hurt me." She winced. "You heard that conversation." "I heard a lot of conversations, including the ones where you and Gil discussed how boring I'd become and how much better your life would be without me dragging you down." "We never said that." I pulled out my phone and opened the Baby Monitor app. 6 weeks of archived recordings, all neatly labeled by date and time. Tuesday, October 15th, 2:47 p.m. You told Gil that living with me was like being married to a piece of furniture. Thursday, October 24th, 3:15 p.m. Gil said I was probably too stupid to notice what was happening under my nose. Should I keep going? The color drained from her face. "You recorded us?" "Jake's Baby Monitor recorded you. I just happened to be checking on my grandson's nap time when I heard my wife discussing how to hide her affair from her stupid husband." "That's illegal." "Actually, it's not. The monitor is there for child safety. I had authorized access, and I discovered your conversations accidentally while checking on Jake. My lawyer assures me it's completely admissible in divorce proceedings." Nessa sat down heavily on my workbench stool. "Drake, I never meant for things to go this far." "How far did you mean for them to go? What was the end game, Nessa? Were you planning to leave me for Gil? Or were you just going to keep using my daughter's house for your Tuesday and Thursday entertainment while I paid the bills and played the fool?" "I don't know. I wasn't thinking that far ahead." "You weren't thinking at all. You were feeling. And your feelings were more important than 31 years of marriage, more important than our daughter's mortgage, more important than our grandson's stability, and definitely more important than my feelings." She started crying then, the kind of tears that had always made me want to fix whatever was wrong. But I felt nothing. No urge to comfort her, no desire to make things better, just a cold, empty space where my sympathy used to be. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. You're sorry your comfortable little arrangement got disrupted. But you're not sorry you did it. If I hadn't found out, you'd still be meeting Gil every Tuesday and Thursday, still lying to my face every night, still treating our marriage like a joke. That's not true. Prove it. Tell me when you plan to stop. Tell me when you were going to choose our marriage over your happiness." She couldn't answer that question because we both knew the truth. She would have kept going until someone forced her to stop. The only difference was that I'd forced the issue instead of waiting for Gil's wife to figure it out or for Cassie's neighbors to start talking. "I'll fight the divorce," she said finally. "Go ahead. I have 6 weeks of recordings, bank records showing the mortgage fraud, and witness statements from the bank inspector. Fight all you want. It just means more people will hear about your Tuesday and Thursday adventures." She left without taking the clothes she'd come for. I went back to work on Mrs. Patterson's furnace, losing myself in the simple satisfaction of fixing something that could actually be repaired. The war escalated over the next 2 weeks. Nessa hired Patricia Vance, the most expensive divorce lawyer in the county, and immediately filed motions challenging everything from the admissibility of the recordings to my right to invoke the mortgage clause. Gil's ex-wife, Jennifer, started calling, wanting to know if her divorce settlement had been affected by his relationship with Nessa. "He told me he wasn't seeing anyone," Jennifer explained during one particularly uncomfortable phone call. "If he was already involved with your wife when our divorce was finalized, it could change the alimony situation." "When did your divorce become final?" "August 15th. I checked my records. Nessa and Gil's first recorded conversation was dated July 23rd. Jennifer, you might want to talk to your lawyer. The domino effect was starting. Gil's lie to his ex-wife about not seeing anyone had legal implications. Nessa's use of Cassie's house for the affair created mortgage fraud issues. Cassie's knowledge and assistance made her an accessory to the fraud. Everyone who'd helped keep the secret was now potentially liable for something. Tom Brennan called with updates every few days, each conversation bringing new complications. Patricia Vance is claiming emotional distress and demanding spousal support, he reported during one call. She's also arguing that your actions with the mortgage were vindictive and designed to harm Cassie rather than protect your interests. My actions were designed to stop the fraudulent use of property I'm legally responsible for. If that harmed Cassie, she should have thought about consequences before she helped orchestrate the fraud. That's essentially what we'll argue. But Drake, this is going to get expensive. Vance doesn't come cheap, and she's going to drag this out as long as possible. How expensive? Potentially $50,000 or more. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my savings account, built up over 25 years of careful money management. Tom, I've been married for 31 years. I know what expensive looks like. This is about principle. Principle doesn't pay legal bills. Neither does giving up and backing down. Stand your ground. The next attack came from an unexpected direction. Cassie's husband, Jake Sr., filed for separation, citing Cassie's involvement in mortgage fraud and her deception about the affair. Suddenly, my daughter was facing the loss of both her house and her marriage. She called me crying, begging me to fix things. Dad, Jake won't even talk to me. He's staying at his brother's house and won't let me bring little Jake to visit. You have to help me. I have to help you? Cassie, you spent 6 months lying to your husband's face while you helped my wife destroy our marriage. What part of that situation makes you think I owe you help? I'm your daughter. You're also an adult who made adult choices. Now you get to live with adult consequences. But little Jake doesn't deserve this. She was right about that. My 4-year-old grandson was innocent in all of this mess, but using him as emotional leverage wasn't going to work. You're absolutely right. Jake doesn't deserve to grow up thinking it's normal for Grandma to bring strange men to the house while Grandpa pays the bills. He doesn't deserve to be coached to lie about Uncle Gil's visits. He doesn't deserve parents who commit mortgage fraud and then act surprised when there are consequences. I never committed fraud. You signed documents stating the house was your primary residence while allowing unauthorized occupants to use it for activities that violated the mortgage terms. That's fraud, Cassie. Federal fraud. The line went quiet except for her crying. Finally, she whispered, "What do you want me to do?" I want you to tell the truth. To your husband, to the bank, to yourself. Stop pretending you're a victim and start taking responsibility for your choices. And if I do that, will you help me save my marriage? I'll testify that you cooperated with the investigation and showed remorse for your actions. What Jake Sr. does with that information is up to him. It wasn't much, but it was all I could offer. I wasn't in the business of fixing other people's marriages anymore. I was having enough trouble destroying my own. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Gil Rowan made a critical mistake. He called Tom Brennan's office directly, trying to negotiate some kind of deal where he'd end his relationship with Nessa in exchange for me dropping the mortgage fraud claims against Cassie. Tom recorded the call, as he does with all client-related communications. "Mr. Rowan," Tom explained patiently, "you don't have standing to negotiate anything in this matter. You're not a party to the divorce proceedings, and you have no legal relationship to the mortgage situation. But I'm the reason this is happening. If I step away, maybe everyone can work things out." "Are you admitting to knowingly participating in the fraudulent use of the property at 47 Pine Street?" Long pause. "I don't think I should answer that without a lawyer. That's probably wise. But since you called to discuss this matter, let me be clear. Your relationship with Mrs. Torrin is documented evidence in ongoing legal proceedings. Ending that relationship now doesn't change the fact that it happened, and it doesn't alter the legal consequences of your actions. Gil hung up, but the damage was done. He'd essentially admitted knowledge of the mortgage fraud and his role in it. Tom immediately filed a motion to include Gil as a co-conspirator in the fraudulent use of property. "This changes everything," Tom explained when he called with the update. "Gil's admission gives us leverage against all parties. Nessa can't claim she didn't know the house use was fraudulent. Cassie can't claim she was an innocent victim, and Gil can't claim he was unaware of the legal implications. What does that mean practically? It means we can probably settle this quickly and favorably. Patricia Vance knows her client is now potentially liable for federal fraud charges. She'll want to deal." Tom was right. The settlement offer came 2 days later. Nessa would accept a no-contest divorce with minimal spousal support in exchange for me agreeing not to pursue federal fraud charges. She would also provide a sworn statement detailing her role in the mortgage fraud, which would help Cassie in her own legal troubles. "It's a good offer," Tom advised. "You get your divorce, you get most of your assets, and you get official acknowledgement that they committed fraud. The only downside is that Nessa walks away relatively unscathed." I thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. "Counteroffer. I want the house, I want my retirement accounts, I want the business, and I want a public apology in the local newspaper. Full-page ad." "Drake, that's vindictive." "No, that's justice. She said she deserved happiness even if it hurt me. Well, I deserve vindication even if it hurts her." Tom sighed. "I'll present the counteroffer, but don't expect them to accept the public apology demand. Then we go to trial. I've got recordings, bank records, and Gil's admission. Let a jury decide how much public humiliation she deserves." The final negotiation took place in Tom's conference room on a gray December morning. Nessa, Patricia Vance, Gil, and his newly hired lawyer sat on one side of the table. Tom and I sat on the other. Patricia Vance was everything I'd expected: sharp suit, sharper tongue, and the kind of confidence that comes from winning cases through intimidation rather than facts. "Mr. Torren," she began, "my client is prepared to be generous in this settlement, but your demands are unreasonable and vindictive." "Your client spent 6 months committing adultery and mortgage fraud," I replied. "My demands are proportionate to her actions. The mortgage situation was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding that happened twice a week for 6 months? That's not a misunderstanding, counselor. That's a pattern of deliberate fraud." Gil's lawyer, a nervous young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, tried to interject. "My client was unaware of any mortgage restrictions. Your client admitted knowledge of the fraudulent use in a recorded phone call to my attorney. Would you like to hear the recording?" The room went quiet. Patricia Vance shuffled through her papers, looking for an angle that didn't exist. "The public apology demand is unacceptable," she said finally. "Then we'll let a jury decide. I'm sure the local newspaper will be happy to cover the trial. Local insurance salesman and county clerk caught in mortgage fraud scheme. That should make interesting reading." Nessa spoke for the first time since the meeting started. "Drake, please, haven't you hurt me enough?" I looked at my wife of 31 years, sitting next to her lawyer and her lover, asking me not to hurt her anymore. "Have I hurt you enough?" "Nessa, I found out about your affair by accident. I responded to it through legal channels. I haven't called you names. I haven't threatened you. I haven't tried to sabotage your job or your relationships. I've simply refused to pretend it didn't happen. You destroyed Cassie's marriage. Cassie destroyed her own marriage by lying to her husband for 6 months. I just stopped enabling the lies. You're trying to destroy my reputation. Your reputation was destroyed the moment you decided to cheat on your husband with a man whose divorce wasn't even final. I'm just making sure people know the truth." Patricia Vance tried one more angle. "Mr. Torren, what do you hope to accomplish with a public apology? It won't save your marriage or undo what happened." "It will establish the truth. For 31 years, I've been the boring husband who wasn't fun enough for his wife. The public apology will make it clear that this marriage ended because my wife chose to cheat, not because I was inadequate. That's ego talking. That's justice talking. Your client publicly humiliated me for 6 months. Turnabout is fair play. The meeting ended without agreement. We were going to trial. The trial was scheduled for late January, but it never happened. 3 days before jury selection, Patricia Vance called Tom with a final settlement offer. "They'll accept all your terms except the public apology," Tom reported. "House, retirement accounts, business, everything. But Vance says the apology demand is a deal breaker." What changed their minds? Jennifer Rowan's lawyer filed a motion to reopen Gil's divorce based on his relationship with Nessa. If that goes through, Gil could owe significant additional alimony. He's pressuring Nessa to settle quickly so he can deal with his own legal problems. I thought about it. The house, the business, my retirement accounts. That was everything I'd worked for over 31 years. The public apology would have been satisfying, but it wasn't worth risking a trial where anything could happen. Counteroffer: I want the apology, but not in the newspaper. I want it read aloud at the final divorce hearing, in open court, on the record. Tom was quiet for a moment. That's actually brilliant. It accomplishes the same thing, public acknowledgement of fault. But it's part of the legal proceeding, rather than a separate humiliation. They might accept that. They did. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for February 14th. Valentine's Day seemed appropriate for ending a marriage that had died of neglect and betrayal. The courthouse was nearly empty when we gathered in Judge Morrison's courtroom. Just the lawyers, the court reporter, a few random observers, and the 4 main players in this mess. Me, Nessa, Gil, and Cassie, who'd been subpoenaed to testify about the mortgage fraud. Judge Morrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd been handling family court for 20 years. She'd seen every variation of human stupidity and selfishness, and her expression suggested she had little patience for any of it. "This is the matter of Torin versus Torin," she announced. "I've reviewed the settlement agreement and the supporting documentation. Before I approve this settlement, I want to hear from the parties directly." Tom nodded to me. This was the moment I'd been waiting for since that conversation in my garage. "Your Honor, I'm Drake Torin. 31 years ago, I married Nessa Kellerman because I loved her and wanted to build a life together. I worked 60-hour weeks to support our family. I co-signed loans to help our daughter buy a house, and I tried to be the kind of husband and father my own father never was." I looked directly at Nessa as I continued. 6 months ago, my wife began an affair with Gil Rowan. They used our daughter's house, the house I co-signed for, as their meeting place. Our daughter helped facilitate this affair by providing access and cover stories. When I discovered what was happening, my wife told me she deserved to be happy, even if it hurt me. Judge Morrison's expression didn't change, but I saw her make a note on her legal pad. "I don't contest my wife's right to pursue happiness, but I do contest her right to pursue it at my expense, using property I'm legally responsible for, with the assistance of a daughter I raised to have better values. This divorce isn't about irreconcilable differences or growing apart. It's about choices and consequences." I sat down. Patricia Vance whispered something to Nessa, who shook her head. Finally, Nessa stood up. "Your Honor, I'm Nessa Torin. I made mistakes during my marriage. I became involved with Gil Rowan and used poor judgment regarding where we met. I hurt my husband, and I involved my daughter in situations that caused problems for her family." She paused, clearly struggling with the words she'd agreed to say. "I take full responsibility for my actions. My husband didn't deserve what I did to him, and I apologize for the pain I caused. The end of our marriage is entirely my fault." It wasn't eloquent, but it was public and on the record. Judge Morrison made more notes. "Mr. Rowan, you're not a party to these proceedings, but you are mentioned extensively in the evidence. Do you have anything to say?" Gil stood up slowly. His expensive suit couldn't hide the fact that he looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past 3 months. "Your Honor, I regret my involvement in this situation. I should have considered the consequences of my actions for all the families involved. I apologize to Mr. Torren for my role in the destruction of his marriage." Judge Morrison turned to Cassie. "Ms. Torren, you've been granted immunity from prosecution in exchange for your testimony about the mortgage fraud. What do you want to tell the court?" Cassie had been crying quietly throughout the hearing. When she stood up, her voice was barely audible. "I helped my mother lie to my father. I let her use my house for her affair, and I lied to my husband about it. I hurt my dad, I hurt my husband, and I hurt my son. I'm sorry." Judge Morrison reviewed her notes one final time. "I've presided over thousands of divorce cases, and I've learned that most marriages end because people stop trying. But this case is different. This marriage ended because one party chose to betray the other party's trust in the most fundamental way possible." She looked directly at Nessa. "Mrs. Torren, your actions didn't just end your marriage. They destroyed your daughter's marriage, traumatized your grandson, and caused financial harm to multiple parties. The settlement agreement is generous to you, given the circumstances." Then she turned to me. "Mr. Torren, you've conducted yourself with remarkable restraint throughout these proceedings. You had every right to pursue criminal charges for the mortgage fraud, and your decision to seek resolution through civil proceedings shows considerable mercy." Judge Morrison signed the divorce decree with a flourish. "This marriage is dissolved. The settlement agreement is approved and incorporated into the final judgment. Court is adjourned." 31 years of marriage ended with the bang of a gavel. As we filed out of the courtroom, Gil tried to approach me in the hallway. "Drake, I want you to know that Nessa and I are ending our relationship. This whole situation has caused too much pain." I stopped walking and looked at him. "Gil, I don't care what you and Nessa do now. You're both free to make whatever choices you want, but understand something. The pain you're worried about? That already happened. You can't undo it by walking away now. I hope someday you can forgive us. I hope someday you understand that forgiveness isn't the same thing as forgetting. I'll never forget what you did. Either of you." I walked out of the courthouse into the cold February afternoon. The divorce was final, the house was mine, and my business was secure. I'd won everything I'd asked for, but winning a divorce isn't like winning a game. There's no celebration, no victory lap. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're above them. I drove home to my empty house and my organized garage, where I had work waiting and problems I could actually solve. Mrs. Patterson's furnace was running perfectly, the Methodist Church heating system was more efficient than ever, and my appointment book was full through the end of March. Honest work, honest pay, honest relationships. After 31 years of marriage and 6 months of lies, that seemed like enough. I never saw Nessa or Gil again. Cassie and Jake Sr. eventually reconciled, though their marriage required counseling and a lot of hard conversations. Little Jake adapted to the new normal with the resilience that children somehow manage. The house on Pine Street was eventually sold to pay off the mortgage and legal fees. Cassie and her family moved to a smaller place across town, where unauthorized visitors weren't welcome and baby monitors only recorded actual babies. As for me, I kept fixing other people's heating and cooling systems, one honest job at a time. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's just refusing to pretend that lies are truth and betrayal is acceptable. Some people deserve happiness, even if it hurts others. But everyone deserves consequences